Every year during the festival of Diwali, millions of people all across India get ready to welcome home an ancient king. But here's the twist. This is no ordinary king. He's actually a demon, an asura, who was banished to the netherworld. And that raises a really fascinating question. Right? I mean, why would you throw a massive party for a figure you'd expect to be the villain of the story? This whole paradox is really the beating heart of the festival of Balipratipada. And to get it, we really need to get to know the so-called demon king himself. Because, as it turns out, the story of this particular demon is way more complex and, honestly, a lot more heroic than you might first think. Okay, so let's meet Mahabali. And yes, he was an asura, which often gets translated as a demon. But the ancient texts also go out of their way to describe him as benevolent and incredibly generous. And his family tree? It's pretty surprising. He was the grandson of Prahlada, who is one of the most famous and beloved devotees of the god Vishnu. That's hardly your typical villain backstory, is it? Under his rule, the world wasn't some place of fear and chaos. It was actually the exact opposite. So let's take a look at what his kingdom was really like. The scriptures really paint this picture of a utopia, a golden age, a time when people were honest and happy, and the kingdom was just this peaceful, prosperous place. Bali ruled without any discrimination. And get this, despite being an asura, he was a huge devotee of Vishnu. His power was absolute. He had conquered all three worlds. And that's exactly where our problem begins. See, Bali's total conquest of the cosmos, even though it was benevolent, had thrown the entire universal order out of whack. The gods, the devas, they'd been defeated and kicked out of their homes, and they really needed help. So when the gods go begging Vishnu for help, he's in a really tough spot. I mean, how could he possibly act against Mahabali? The guy was a virtuous ruler and one of his own most dedicated followers. He just couldn't justify it. So violence was completely off the table. Vishnu had to find another way, a clever test, really. One that wasn't designed to punish Bali, but to challenge the very limits of his famous integrity. And this brings us right to the climax of the legend, a divine plan that unfolds in 3 absolutely monumental steps. So, Mahabali was in the middle of performing this massive sacrifice, a yajna, and as part of it, he made a vow to grant any wish that was asked of him. His generosity and his integrity were known throughout the cosmos. He would never, ever go back on his word, and Vishnu knew it. This was the perfect opportunity. Vishnu takes on the form of Vamana, a small, humble Brahmin boy. He was the picture of innocence, right? The very last person you'd expect to be a threat to a king who ruled the entire universe. He walks up to Mahabali to ask for a gift. And what does he ask for? Something that sounds so insignificant. Just as much land as he can cover in 3 of his tiny little steps. Mahabali, even though his advisor warns him, just laughs and agrees. But then the transformation begins. Vamana expands into this giant cosmic form. With his first step, bam, he covers the entire earth. With his second, he covers all of the heavens. There is literally nothing left for the 3rd step. Vamana asks, where am I supposed to place my 3rd step? And Mahabali, without a moment's hesitation, honors his promise in the only way he has left. He bows down and offers his own head. Vishnu, just completely moved by this ultimate act of devotion, places his foot on Bali's head and gently pushes him down to rule the netherworld. But you have to understand, this wasn't a punishment, it was a blessing. In recognition of his incredible integrity, Vishnu granted Mahabali a boon. Once every year, he could return to Earth to visit his beloved people and see his kingdom flourish. And that very boon, that ancient promise, is the entire reason for the festival. It's a promise that is still kept alive today. The festival is known as Balipratipada. It's celebrated on the 4th day of Diwali, and its whole purpose is to commemorate that annual return. It is, quite literally, the day the people welcome their king home. And this celebration is incredibly widespread. In Maharashtra, they call it Bali Padwa. In Himachal Pradesh, it's Barlaj. In Jammu, Rajabali. And in regions like Gujarat and Rajasthan, the day is so auspicious, it's actually celebrated as the New Year, or Bestu Varas. It's just a huge testament to the story's enduring power. All of the traditions are designed to honor Mahabali and celebrate his return. People decorate their homes with these beautiful, colorful floor patterns called rangoli, often with images of Bali himself. They light rows of lamps to basically create a runway to guide their king home. There are community feasts, gift exchanges, special prayers. All of it creates this vibrant, joyous atmosphere fit for the homecoming of a truly beloved ruler.
So clearly, Mahabali's story is not one of a simple villain, but his legacy is even more complex, especially when you see how it varies across different traditions.
Now, in the Hindu narrative we've been exploring, he's this benevolent king whose defeat is actually a test of piety that grants him immortality. But then, you look at Jain mythology, and it's a completely different story. He's portrayed as one of the 9 anti-heroes, an evil king who was defeated and killed for his wickedness. It just goes to show how these major figures can be interpreted in vastly different ways. But in the Hindu tradition, his heroic status is pretty much cemented in a very specific way. There's a hymn to the 7 immortals of Hinduism, the Chiranjeevi, and right there, you can see it, is the name Bali. He is counted among them, those destined to live until the end of this age. So his story doesn't end in defeat, it ends in eternal life.
Which brings us right back to our central question. Was being pushed into the netherworld a fall from grace for a so-called demon king? Or was offering his own head to keep his promise the ultimate victory for a devoted soul? That's the beautiful question Balipratipada invites us all to consider every single year when the lamps are lit to welcome him home.